It's now my pleasure to invite Mrs. Valerie Levkov, Vice President for Infrastructure at the World Bank Group, to deliver the opening remarks. Please, Valerie, the floor is yours.
So thank you. Good morning, distinguished colleagues, partners and friends, and for all the ones who are online. So it's a great pleasure to welcome you to the launch of this important ESMAP report, Electrolyzers for Hydrogen Production. It comes at a pivotal moment as countries race to develop cutting-edge energy solutions to boost their industries and create jobs. So the World Bank's group mandate on energy is clear: to help countries deliver affordable, reliable energy at scale while managing emissions risks. Energy is one of the foundational infrastructure that will support economical development and jobs creation. That's why we are scaling up our financing to provide cost-effective energy solutions that can provide power to entire economies and create jobs. But in a rapidly changing energy landscape, finance alone is not enough. Countries need data, analytics, and implementation know-how. This report is a prime example of the Knowledge Bank. It embodies our renewed ambition to turn knowledge into development impact, and it draws on operational experience, private sector data, and global technical expertise to provide actionable insights for policymakers and investors. Hydrogen matters for development. Clean hydrogen is not a silver bullet, but for many countries, it is a strategic opportunity to leverage abundant natural resources, to decarbonize hard-to-abate sectors such as steel, chemical, shipping, which are great industry creating jobs, and create new export industries. At the end of the day, generating economic growth. The World Bank Group is actively accelerating the deployment of clean hydrogen in developing economies. Our approach is practical and country-driven, from green hydrogen hubs in Brazil, Syria, to project preparation in Chile, India, Mauritania, Namibia, and shared low-carbon infrastructures at ports, such as in Morocco. So ESMAP is at the heart of his work, and the report we are launching today is a perfect example of its value. Electrolyzers are the engine of clean hydrogen. Their cost, efficiency, supply chains, and deployment models will determine whether hydrogen becomes viable at scale in developing countries. That's a major question in it. This report translates cutting-edge technical analysis into practical guidance on how costs are evolving, what deployment pathway look like, what infrastructure is required, and what policy frameworks can unlock investment. Most importantly, it is designed not just to inform, but to enable action. None of this work happens in isolation. Partnerships are central to our approach, especially with our client countries, who are not only beneficiaries, but co-creators of solutions. In preparing this report, we engaged more than 50 firms, including electrolyzer manufacturers and project developers, to ensure that our analysis reflects real market conditions. This is the World Bank Group's unique value, bringing together government, private sector, development partners, and financiers to solve complex challenges. And we can say that green hydrogen is one of the complex challenges of the energy sector. Because scaling hydrogen and scaling energy more broadly requires creating ecosystems for collaborations. Let me close with a call to action. The scale of the energy challenge demands that we invest faster, innovate smarter, share knowledge more efficiently, and partner more deeply. With ESMAP's leaderships, and again, thanks for the ESMAP tip for bringing us together this morning, including through the Hydrogen for Development partnerships. And the insights from this new report, countries can find tools to make informed strategic decisions about hydrogen. Our goal is not hydrogen for its own sake. Our goal is development, job, competitiveness, resilience, and sustainable growth. If we get this right, hydrogen can be one of the several options to help emerging economies deliver the energy their people and their industry need and achieve their development ambitions. I thank you all, and I wish you a very good panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valerie, for scoping the relevance of the report in the Knowledge Bank and also for highlighting how hydrogen can serve as an industry to generate jobs, support sustainable development, and especially advance on industrial decarbonization. And we know you need to leave the room, so thank you again for being here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And with that, we pass on the floor to Demetrios Papatanasios. He's the Global Director for Energy and Extractives at the World Bank. Demetrios, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Caroline, and good morning here in the Americas. I understand we're streaming live, so good evening if you're connecting around Asia, and good afternoon in Europe and Africa. Let me jump into why we're doing this report on electrolyzers. And we launched our Hydrogen for Development initiative about 4 years ago at COP27 in Egypt. So in these last 4 years, with generous support from initially the government of Spain, then the government of Japan, and right now from the government of the UK under their industrial decarbonization efforts, we wanted to focus on hydrogen because we know that hydrogen, at the end of the day, if it is to provide energy, it is the energy carrier of everything. We talk about hydrocarbons, oil, gas, but the real carrier of energy, even on these fuels, is actually the molecule of hydrogen. So hydrogen is critical for energy. And then the big question is, can we get it from water? And when we were looking at the history of what happened, the reality is that water was split into hydrogen and oxygen first in 1800. So almost more than 200 years ago. And what was the most interesting thing is that to do it actually, they used the recently invented batteries. So all of this scientific action was happening in the early 19th century, the end of 17th century. And very quickly it went into fiction. One of my favorite books that I quoted in the foreword of this report was The Mysterious Island by Julius Verne. So already when this was written, again, in early 19th century, there is the engineer of the team in The Mysterious Island that says, one day we're going to get infinite energy from water, and it's going to be much more powerful compared to coal. And this is all true. Now, we're well into the 21st century, and what we note is that if you take a kilogram of hydrogen, we know that its content is roughly 33, 34 kilowatt hours. And what we have found out as we were doing our research on hydrogen is that to produce a kilogram of hydrogen from water using electrolysis, you need about 50 kilowatt hours. So you need about 50% more energy of the final content of a kilogram of hydrogen if you split water through electrolysis. So there's a big spread there, right? 50% more energy to get the energy content of hydrogen into water. And what I asked our team to do is, okay, where is this 50% coming from? What are the economics behind this 50%? And is there anything that can be done so that this can be done more efficiently, both in terms of the physics of it, the chemistry of it, and the economics of it? And when we were looking at the economics of hydrogen, and we produced our report about 2 years ago, we felt that very little was available, especially in the public domain, about what is happening with electrolysis, electrolyzers. So we felt that there was a gap there. And this is what this report is about. First of all, figure out what is this 50% of extra energy that is needed and what it takes to get hydrogen from water. What are the economics behind it? What are the financial implications? What is the state of technology? And ESMAP is really fulfilling its role as being a knowledge conveyor, a think tank, by trying to fill this gap with very good public information. So the team has spent more than a year, I think, really going deep into the issues and trying to find confidential information, talking to the industry, working out financial models. And we have learned a lot. And it's a particular pleasure that we're putting out this report now and that we have the team to give us some of the salient features and the findings. Again, this is actually happening today. I was just yesterday meeting with the chief editor on energy and climate from The Economist, and he was telling me that he recently visited the NEOM project in Saudi Arabia, where this is actually happening. Investments are happening, everything is going on. So increasingly, we see that the fiction of the early 19th century is becoming a reality. Clearly, there's a long way to go, and it's important that we manage expectations. And I think with this report, we managed to contribute and fill a bit of a knowledge gap and hopefully bring forward some answers on a lot of the questions that people have regarding the full chain of hydrogen production. So with this, let me give it back to Sylvia, Carolina, and the team.
Thank you very much, Demetrios, for setting up the background on why this report was created and also how the report fills the gap on the technology, financing, and economic aspects. And with that, we pass on to listen to the key findings of the report. For that, let me introduce to Dolph Keeling, the lead of the hydrogen program and senior energy economist.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carolina. And it's a great pleasure to give you flavor of what's in that report. It was a substantial work. We did about 50 interviews, as Demetrios said, with equipment suppliers, with project developers, with financiers. And we also did a lot of in-house analysis to support this quantitative, especially financial analysis. And we have also dedicated information from a number of World Bank lending operations where we also invest in electrolyzers, and I think we'll also hear from the IFC on that one. So an important insight from these interviews was we got sometimes contradicting statements. And that is not a surprise because this is still a new field. So there is still limited long-term experience with these technologies to deploy them at large scale. So projects like NEOM are coming on stream now, hopefully end of the year. But so far, let's say most projects that are operational for some time are 10 megawatt projects, something like that. There is very few 100 megawatt or gigawatt scale projects. And that makes that a lot of the statements you need to make a judgment. Do we believe that, or do we think, well, maybe a little bit more is needed? So we try to be careful in the claims. also to say that the work we've been doing in the context of what we call the 10 GW Lighthouse Initiative, so where we work with the financing institutions, 15 financing institutions, and we're trying to combine our financial means and our financial instruments to get projects to final investment decision. Of course, from a financier side, there's always the question, is this a robust technology? Don't we introduce some risk here? It's important to know the latest state of these technologies and how reliable these technologies are before you get to financial closure. So this report helps in that context. So what is the content? We look at what is the market status. We look at what are the electrolyzer costs and cost projects. And finally, we look at due diligence aspects. How do you select an electrolyzer? What aspects should you look at? And what you see here on the slide is the cover of that report. And we had the pleasure of visiting this project. It's the high iron project in Namibia, visited last year. It's operational. But if you look at what you see on the photos, you see a large PV field and you see a small white building, and in that building is a small electrolyzer. Well, significant scale. It's a 12 megawatt electrolyzer, but the point is that the electrolyzer is a small part of a much larger system. And what is remarkable is it's only operated with PV. If you had asked a few years ago, people would have said, that is not possible because you have a variability. But they've managed to do that also by combining with batteries. So you see more and more of these systems operating with batteries. This plant is in the middle of the desert. So immediately the question is, where do you get water from? Well, they use the hydrogen to make iron. And if you make iron, the water is recovered. And they use dry cooling. No water needed. So just to say that there is a lot of innovation taking place. And we see a lot of these innovations taking place in the projects with the project developers we're having a dialogue with. So if we move to the next one. So key insights. There is today 4 key electrolyzer technologies: alkaline, proton exchange membrane, solid oxide, and anion exchange membrane. But in fact, 2 of them dominate the market today, alkaline and PEM. There is a big mismatch between the supply potential, manufacturing potential of electrolyzers, and the demand at this moment. So on the cost side, we found a huge range of cost. But the lower end of cost that we saw is around $1,000 a kilowatt, which is a lot lower than some of the numbers you hear at the moment. And if you look at how to select an electrolyzer, of course, CapEx is important, but you really need to look at the levelized cost. Because, for example, as Demetrios mentioned, electricity cost, of course, is key. And as said, new solutions are coming that allow better integration also of variable renewables. And if you move into due diligence, into selection of your equipment supplier, there's also a number of other aspects you should take into account, and we also looked at these. Next one, please. So first of all, the market for electrolyzers. So last year, about 2 gigawatt new installation, very significant, but what's coming is much larger. There is around 16 gigawatts of electrolyzers under construction last year. And there was additionally 4 gigawatts which had reached final investment decision where construction had not yet started. So this market will continue to grow in the coming years. In terms of the geographic distribution, so if you look at what's under construction, China accounts for around 2/3 of the total. So that's also important, and of course that will change. You will also see emerging in India, etc. But that's today's status. And if you look at what technologies are being installed, so alkaline and PEM dominate right now. Next one, please. Now, so a market of a few gigawatts a year, a manufacturing capacity of 60 gigawatts a year. So an order of magnitude larger. So the industry is ready to ramp up, but the demand is a bit lagging. And that, of course, is a very difficult situation. So you have a lot of manufacturing plants right now, electrolyzer manufacturing plants that are idling. And you see a lot of restructuring right now going on in the sector because of that. If you look at what is the manufacturing capacity composed of, around 3/4 is alkaline, and then around 1/5 is PEM. So these two technologies really dominate. That's what you see on the left side here. On the right side, you see the breakdown of where that manufacturing capacity is located, and you see remarkable differences. So alkaline, very much dominated by Chinese production. PEM is much more distributed at the moment in terms of where the capacity is located. And of course, these numbers are dynamic. As said, there are companies that cease operation, but there are also still new plants coming on stream. Large AEM plants also come on stream. So this picture will change in the coming years. Next one, please. Now, looking at cost. If you talk about cost, you really need to be very clear on what exactly do we mean by electrolyzer cost. Because, and that was a problem in the past, where people talked about electrolyzers, but they meant the stack. And the stack is the small box inside the electrolyzer. But you forget 80% of the cost if you only talk about stack. So you need a stack, but you also need a balance, what's called a balance of system. You need a balance of plant. And then you have, apart from this direct capital expenditure, you have also indirect capex expenditure. For example, the engineering, procurement, and construction cost can be quite significant, and there's various other indirect capex. So the notion was that cost had gone up, but in fact, we were comparing apples and pears. We're comparing previous estimates only based on stack with total system costs in practice. So if you look at full systems cost, you see that there is a downward cost trend if you do it properly. Next one, please. So if you look at the direct capex, the stack is about 1/3. The other costs are around 2/3 of the total. So you really need to think about that electricity part. You really need to think about the gas separation part. You really need to think about the water treatment if you talk total electrolyzer systems. And as I said, the systems cost estimates we encountered that there was quite a wide spread. So the best projects that are coming on stream at the moment, both alkaline and PEM, are around $1,000 a kilowatt. But for example, yesterday, the latest data came out for what electrolyzer systems cost that came on stream last year in Europe. And it was, both for alkaline and PEM, $2,400 a kilowatt. So there's a big gap, a big spread in cost. And only if you really are very careful in your project design, if you take the engineering part on in-house, if you design systems without building, so containerized systems, and so you get to that lower end of cost. So it gives you a sense of where we are in this early market. If you do careful project design, you can have quite economically viable cost. Next one, please. So we talked about CapEx, but in fact, if you look at the breakdown of levelized cost of hydrogen, then the electrolyzer is only about a third of that. 2/3 is electricity. So if you have an electrolyzer that uses less electricity, you reduce that electricity cost component very significantly. So that means you not only need to look at the CapEx, you also need to look at what is the electric efficiency of that electrolyzer. You also need to look at what are other maintenance costs. For example, what is the lifespan of the stack within that electrolyzer system? Because there are also some significant differences. And if you have to replace the stack, that's a significant cost. So not only look at the CapEx, but look at full life cycle cost components. Next one, please. And so we looked at sensitivities for a number of key parameters. So here we had a central case of $4.8 kilo of hydrogen. But if you have a number of these key factors, the cost can be significantly lower. And again, there is an interaction between electrolyzer choice and the value of these parameters. So for example, we looked at projects in Chile. Chile has very low solar PV cost during the day, but the nighttime renewable electricity costs are at least twice as high because there are constraints in the grid. So if you can have an electrolyzer that produces most of the hydrogen during the day, and that doesn't need the base load electricity, that reduces the electricity cost, the average electricity cost, very significantly. But not every electrolyzer has that capacity. So there are these type of complexities you need to take into account as you select your electrolyzers. And there are various strategies being deployed to deal with that. I mean, I already mentioned the issue of batteries. So systems today are often with an hour of battery storage, but you see now project designers thinking about systems with 4 hours of battery storage. So that will change the equation again of what is the optimal design. Next one, please. So how to select electrolyzers? I hope I have given you a sense of it's not that easy, but we have some guidance. A key insight is start with a really good understanding of the electricity supply characteristics and what you can do on that side. And then second, see how that fits with various technology characteristics. Think about cost not only in terms of CapEx, but in terms of full life cycle cost. And then we looked in detail at the various offers from the various equipment manufacturers. And also there, you need to think about what is the warranty that is being offered, what is the performance guarantees you get for also a longer period. Are there service agreements in place, and what are the costs of these service agreements? So a number of other aspects to think about as you select your supplier. And I mentioned this imbalance also in today's market. So there's also considerations about continuity of all these let's say, services that come with the sale. And then a final aspect is, of course, there are many governments that see this as an opportunity also for building up local industries in equipment manufacturing. In certain jurisdictions, there are local content requirements, so they can also play into this, and various fiscal incentives can also play into this. So I hope I've given you a flavor. As said, we are very aware that this is a very dynamic market, so this is a snapshot. And we're happy also to gather feedback in the coming weeks and take that into account as we refine our recommendations. And that concludes my remarks. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dal, for the presentation on the insights. We now move to our panel discussion. And it is my pleasure to have five experts that represent industry, policy, and financing, and to discuss how this electrolyzer report resonates with you and with the activities that you are implementing. I am honored to welcome our first participant, Ivana Jemelkova, Chief Executive Officer of the Hydrogen Council. And please, Ivana, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Carolina, and thank you all. Given I'm your first virtual participant, can I check the quality of the connection? Are we seeing and hearing each other well? Wonderful. And congratulations. I see the topic has sparked quite some interest. I see we are over 200 participants online. So thank you again to the World Bank for the opportunity, for your continued partnership with the global hydrogen industry, and also congratulations on the report. It's a very timely contribution to the debate. And I would like to say that we especially appreciate the direct insights that you have sourced from companies truly building projects and deploying electrolyzers around the world. That you have offered. I'm very honored to represent the Hydrogen Council, which is the world's largest and only CEO-led hydrogen alliance. We bring together some 140 members from over 20 different countries around the world, and as such provide a pretty comprehensive perspective on what's happening in hydrogen. And with your permission, I will pick up where Valerie and Dimitrios left us in the opening. The importance of fact-based, of knowledge that informs, and I will quote here, and enables strategic decision-making. That is so critical. We are at a really interesting moment in hydrogen, and that is some 3, 4, 5 years ago, many countries around the world came forward with national hydrogen strategies, and we're really in the thick of it right now. We are really implementing, building, working together to follow through on those targets, on those strategies. And that means there are some real business decisions being taken right now. Some initially announced projects are moving forward, and some are not. And that is really typical for the stage of development where we are right now. It also means there's quite a lot of noise, emotion and opinion, if you will. So I go back to what you highlighted in the introduction, the importance of effect-based conversation. And this is why we're so happy to partner with the World Bank, because the Hydrogen Council itself has been, for the last 5 years, tracking every single publicly announced project out there. And I would like to contribute to the conversation by sharing some insights from our tracking, with a particular focus on renewable hydrogen, and maybe confirm or contradict, that's for debate, some of the conclusions of the report, because we are indeed seeing many of the same issues in our work. So let me begin by saying that hydrogen is moving, hydrogen is growing around the world. That's not always obvious when you open the newspapers these days. There's a lot of focus on perhaps the things that are not moving forward, that are either being delayed or, as I mentioned, that become victim of the natural attrition of that commercial decision making. But I will offer you a few numbers to illustrate what I mean. In the last 5 years, the committed capital, the capital commitments in hydrogen have grown 10 times. So we have a 10x scale growth curve in clean hydrogen around the world. We have grown from just a few dozens of projects to now 510 projects past final investment decision in construction, or in fact already in operation. Dolph and others, you've mentioned a few examples, and the report is full of such great examples and insights. The project size has also grown. We used to be looking at single megawatts, and now we are well into the tens and really talking about projects at the 100+ megawatt scale. So that's true industrial projects, and that's given us a lot of opportunity to gain insight in what is really working and why that is happening. The second myth I encounter very often is that perhaps it is not renewable hydrogen, but other types of hydrogen that keep growing. And again, I offer you some facts. There's been an 8 times increase, so 8x increase in renewable hydrogen capacity in just the last 5 years. 70% increase just between the last and the second last measuring period. So in the 24 months or in the 12 months preceding 2025, renewable hydrogen capacity has grown by 70%. So that we are really seeing the uptick, the growth curve picking up. And if we look at the outlook of what's ahead for us, equally encouraging, of the 6 MTPA of committed capacity right now, more than half is renewable. So really, I think the key takeaways here are hydrogen is absolutely moving and going through a scale-up curve that is very typical and very reminiscent, actually, of other recent scale-up technologies like solar and wind, and specifically renewable hydrogen, although it started from a relatively lower base, is equally moving through that growth curve. But there are 2 challenges, and this is where I will offer some food for thought and perhaps validate or offer additional perspectives on the outcomes of the report. The 2 challenges are as follows. 1, there is extremely uneven development around the world. And Dolph, you very eloquently alluded to that already. We are looking at countries like China, where of the 110 billion in committed capital that I mentioned earlier, 33 are attributable to China. So we're really looking at a third of that global committed investment. China is off the charts, if you allow me that expression, when it comes to renewable hydrogen investment. So we're really seeing that sort of that advantage and that swift development in that part of the world. Now, that is not to say that things are not happening elsewhere. They absolutely are. And we are looking with great interest at places like India, at certain markets in Latin America, at certain markets in Africa, and obviously Europe, where the situation is somewhat complex, but we are looking at a number of countries within the European Union as good examples of actually getting to the maturity in renewable hydrogen. So, Dolph, what you said about the contradicting statements, the spread of realities on cost, maturity, scale, that is absolutely true. That is very commensurate with the actual state of play. There are countries which are moving forward, projects that are racing towards completion and operation, and there are countries and projects that have obviously been somewhat slower. Projects have been scrapped. The operational experience is simply not there. The second challenge that I see, and this is where I know we're moving outside of this report, but let's for a moment indeed accept that based on the facts we've shared, the supply side is moving forward quite well, unevenly, but quite well in aggregate. The key issue and the elephant in the room is demand. The demand that will actually pull some of this development. And it's really key for us to make sure that is firmed up. Again, going back to the national strategies that were put in place a couple of years ago, it is absolutely critical that we see the follow-through on implementation so that businesses have the clarity, predictability, certainty, and the pragmatic frameworks to actually make these large investments. We're looking at the implementation of key legislation, carbon energy legislation in Europe. We're looking at various contracts for different schemes in places like Japan, Asia. We're looking for various credits in North America, and so on and so forth. We've calculated that simply just following through on that implementation would really provide that necessary global demand pull. So in conclusions, I want to pick up on what Valerie said in her opening. Hydrogen is a major strategic opportunity. It gives countries, developed and developing ones, an opportunity to really leverage the abundant natural resources to not only decarbonize, but also enhance their national security, create new economic opportunities, and safeguard the resilience of its industry. So really looking forward to that continued collaboration, and would argue that the importance and urgency of action here is very clear. So thank you so much again, and looking forward to the rest of the conversation.
Microphone's not audible. Hi. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Well, first I want to thank you, Dolph and the team at the World Bank, for FCHEA being a part of the H4D partnership for since its inception, and also for the opportunity to comment on this report. It was very good to see this compendium of information pulled together at a time, as Ivana pointed out, the industry really needs information, decision making, so we can ramp ourselves to the next level. I'll make a couple of comments. First, FCHEA is the industry trade association in the United States for hydrogen, and have been advocating for the advancement of this industry for nearly 35 years. It's good to see a refreshing report that delves into the real details of cost effectiveness. And I'll make a couple of comments. I think, first, it's not surprising that we have seen highly competitive pricing and highly competitive structures in our electrolyzer community. As the report points out, the industry is finding niches, it's maximizing performance, and it's looking wherever it can to drive down costs. And I think that comes through very strongly in the report. I want to give a sense of perhaps over the next several years how I see the industry moving beyond just the pieces that are defined in the report. That you're going to see continued cost reductions. I think and I see this is not just in first cost. The operating fleet that's beginning to be emerging, and will be emerging in some of the data that both Dolph and Ivana pointed out, is going to show areas where there can be reduced operating costs, higher availability, better performance points, and that's going to translate into cost reduction on the life cycle cost, not just first cost. I think you'll also see that performance in general is going to improve as our OEMs, OEMs that cannot demonstrate performance are not going to be able to be surviving in this competitive landscape. So there's going to be a high pressure on improving performance, engineering, operational issues beyond what the report pointed out. And the last thing I want to comment on among all the data is the subject of innovation. I think you are going to be seeing more differentiation as OEMs seek competitive advantages. They see successes, and they're looking for, as one point out of the report, more variable performance and trying to get adoption into niche markets. I think you'll also see more emphasis on modularity. Installed costs and EPC costs are a high proportion of the total first cost. You'll see OEMs take strides to go beyond what they've done to become more and more modular, delivering end product systems that have far less on-site construction requirements, and that'll definitely be driving down costs. The last thing I want to point out is I think you're going to see more of an expansion of recognition. And what I mean by that is, even in the definition of this report, we look at an electrolyzer as a producer of hydrogen, and we often sort of dismiss or don't notice the fact that the use cases of hydrogen, or of use cases of electrolyzers, are really that of an enabler. You'll hear later about the ammonia e-fuels contributions. Well, without electrolytic hydrogen, those types of projects that produce secondary fuels, secondary commodity products, don't get the leverage up. So we're really part of that ecosystem. You're also going to see value, I think, as the world continues to look at nuclear power and how electrolysis coupled with nuclear power provides more value. Again, it's outside of the normal consideration of what we've seen for electrolyzers, but it expands that recognition. And lastly, you got growing markets in semiconductors. The electrolysis activities that provide pure hydrogen are also valuable in other growing areas. And I think that the performance of the fleets producing hydrogen around the world are also going to give more visibility to additional uses of this wonderful technology. And I'm really pleased that Dolph and the team have put together such a great compendium to show where we are today and the factors ahead as we try to advance hydrogen and specifically electrolytic hydrogen around the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank, for your intervention and for sharing how the future of the industry looks like, especially on cost and performance, but also to bring on the topic of how hydrogen is an enabler for ammonia, for e-fuels, and for industries downstream. And with that, it is our pleasure to have here in the discussion Mr. Abhay Bakre. He's the Mission Director of India's National Green Hydrogen Mission. And it would be a pleasure for all the participants today to listen what is the status of the domestic electrolyzer manufacturing and operation in India, but also the lessons learned from the very successful programs that India has implemented in the past year. Mr. Bakre, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Carolina. Let me first compliment Dolph and the World Bank team for putting up such a useful and very knowledgeable report giving detailed data. I hope my voice is clear. So the kind of analysis which has been presented in this report is going to be very helpful for the Indian National Green Hydrogen Mission, as we call it, the green hydrogen, primarily the renewable hydrogen and the biomass pathway. In this strategy, for the last 3 years, we have, after we have announced this mission, we have taken many policies, and also auctions have been announced. A lot of capacities already in the final stages of FID. Many of them have started their construction. But most important, the lessons what we learned is for a country like India, there exists a huge opportunity for the domestic demand creation, which is basically being leveraged as part of definite demand aggregation in the potential sectors, and also leveraging the national grid, which is going to be useful in the streamlining the investment, finding out the appropriate locations for setting up the plants, putting up the renewable generation plants, etc. So in this regard, we had given options for the green hydrogen production, but also the setting up domestic manufacturing capacity for electrolyzers. As mentioned, that majority industries and also the manufacturers are preferring the alkaline one, but equally important is the PEM for the various reasons already explained by Dolph, especially on the variable renewable and also the efficiency part. At the same time, we are also looking for the rest of the two technologies, that's SOEC and the AEM, which some of the small manufacturers are trying to put forth in order to create the demand for not only for the hydrogen alone, but also for the electrolyzer itself through the domestic resources. We are trying to open up many more sectors. That's the lessons which we have learned. On one hand, we are trying to create domestic capability for balance of plant, because they are the low-hanging fruits. There are sectors available, a lot of SME clusters available in India who can easily improvise and produce the various components of BOP. They can also do a lot of balance of stake part, and we are also in the process of encouraging some of the anodes and even the membrane parts, if it is possible, in the next 2 to 3 years. So while we have incentivized setting up almost 3,000 megawatt of per year capacity within India through any technology which is feasible, the preference has been already on the alkaline and PM side. But we are also pushing for a lot of components which can be domestically manufactured, like especially the anodes and other parts, as I mentioned. However, this can only scale up further when there is enough demand for the electrolyzer, because when the projects are getting set up, we are not, as of now, we are not putting any restriction to the source of the country as well, because it is the cost of the final cost of the hydrogen, which is at this moment is going to be the main criteria. But the kind of opportunity which is available in India, even the domestic prices of the electrolyzer are expected to come down. As we have recently seen within the last 1.5 to 2 years, the cost of hydrogen itself has come down from something $5 to $5.50 to almost $3 now. The other aspect, as we discussed and also previously mentioned by Ivana, is about the demand creation. We are also focusing on not only the hydrogen as a direct consumption, but the various derivatives like ammonia, both for the domestic demand as well as the export purpose. So that also will actually create the overall demand for the electrolyzer manufacturing. In this regard, many more new sectors can be used, whether it's a transport, even the railways has started, and a few more process industries apart from steel, etc. The use of green hydrogen derivatives can actually, even to a smaller percentage, can create a huge demand for a country like India. So in that way,
Muted or
yes.
Oh.
My apologies if there was an issue. So the new sectors are capable of creating more demand for the hydrogen derivatives, and that way there will be preference to procure electrolyzer and the other BOP locally, and that will actually strengthen the capabilities of domestic market. So I think the lessons is that we need to start from many more sectors, many more areas, and also we can start from any capacity. For export purpose, large capacities are equally important from FID point of view, but at the domestic level, even the smaller capacities in variety of sectors can create demand both for the hydrogen as well as ultimately the demand for the electrolyzer. I think these are the key lessons, but apart from the skilling and standards are also area where we are focusing as part of mission. I believe by 2030, the Indian ecosystem will be quite well developed to scale up most of the sectors where the hydrogen consumption is feasible at now. Thank you so much for inviting me. Over to you.
Also, it's fantastic to hear what India is doing on demand creation and how you're working with industry, for instance, with the steel sector to move the green hydrogen economy forward. And with that, I would like to introduce our next participant, Mr. Naoki Tsuji. He's a representative of Japan Bank for International Cooperation in the Washington, D.C. office. And please, Mr. Naoki, the floor is yours.
Thank you. To date, 3 projects have been already awarded, including green hydrogen production project in Japan domestically. Outside Japan, 1 single project, blue ammonia production project in Louisiana in the United States, has been awarded, and JV committed to support this project more than $600 million with this project. But at the same time, given that Japan could become one of the world's largest hydrogen demand country, it's necessary to import a certain amount of hydrogen from abroad. So with this in mind, JVIC is actively involved in creating hydrogen global value chain. So accordingly, JVIC is not only focusing on the upstream hydrogen production project, but also we've already supported downstream hydrogen utilization project, such as hydrogen refueling station for SUV, and also made an equity investment in hydrogen fund, which covers upstream and midstream transportation to the downstream. However, as for the hydrogen production project, JVIC has only supported the blue ammonia production project. But this does not mean we are focusing on only blue and ammonia. To be honest with you, at this point, blue ammonia is relatively in a good position from a cost of competitiveness perspective. However, from an energy security standpoint, it is crucial to diversify the source of hydrogen, including country and color and the derivatives. And so JVIC has had an extensive discussion with various Japanese companies and government, and also the international partners as well, green, blue, and ammonia, LOH, and liquefied hydrogen. And one point I'd like to add is that I've referred to green or blue because it's really easy to describe and understand, but we do not stick to the color of hydrogen. We put an importance of the carbon intensity because our ultimate goal is not utilizing renewable power, but reducing the carbon emission. Finally, I'd like to touch upon the bankability point of view. In principle, banks cannot take the technology risk until the technology has been proven, means have enough track record. However, towards carbon neutrality by 2050 or so, we cannot wait until all relevant technology have been proven. So understanding the technology itself and also the market environment is also important. So in this regard, the World Bank's report is quite valuable for the bank this year. And to enhance bankability, for example, as Dolph also already mentioned, the initial cost of the electrolyzer itself is, of course, one of the important aspects, but also kind of lifetime cost, because as the banks requires the certainty of cash flow or the revenue from the project. So, for example, reliability of electrolyzer, including stable operation or long-term maintenance service agreement. So, yeah, so I'd like to mention is that such kind of discussion about appropriate risk allocation or risk mitigation measures should be made from an early stage of the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Naoki, for sharing the perspective from one of the largest demand players in the world, and also for bringing the topic on bankability and how the risk allocation is super critical to move these projects to FID. And you have set up the scene so that we can now go with our last panelist of this session, Mrs. Naide Martinez Rubio, the Principal Investment Officer at IFC, and a colleague that moved forward two of the lending operations that the IFC has approved. Naide, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carolina, and thanks everyone. Indeed, in IFC we are, as you know, looking also into at least a handful of projects very seriously across our country's operation. We are part of the World Bank Group, of course, and we work as the private sector lending arm and investment arm. And so, yes, indeed, as of now, IFC has invested in one project in Uruguay. This was a kind of our first project actually financed by the World Bank Group. 2 megawatt electrolyzers. It's still a bit modest, but showing actually on the ground already demand and real results. That was a product used around trucks for the forestry industry in Uruguay, which is quite relevant. And a bit of a pilot, but also a lot of lessons learned from that project in the sense that indeed this is a nascent industry. Costs are still high up, but coming down. And showing the relevance not only of proper project development. This was mostly led by local developers and engineers, but supported by the Santander Group on the financing side, and as well by the government of Uruguay. So one of the key things to underscore here is the relevance of government support or some other form of kind of financing support that gets projects to get off the ground, but then also support the cost because it's still on the high end at the moment. So one key thing there was that overall support from the government and their vision and strategy for this project to be part of their second, what they call their second energy transition, having already decarbonized a big part of their grid. So that's one project we've already invested in. We are already working in another one that many of you must already be aware of, although not committed yet, which is a project in Paraguay looking to decarbonize the fertilizer industry, which not only has the benefit, I mean, these projects, and I think the key element of all of these projects is that they have to rely on key and strong fundamentals, right? So this project not only helps substitute imports of fertilizers, but also from a kind of standalone point of view, has to make sense on a cost perspective. So with this in mind, I just want to kind of open up the discussion on what we see when we try to bank and from a bankability perspective, this type of projects. So if we look at the sort of broader production, and I mean project finance in this case, because many of the projects have been mostly banked as of now or supported on a more corporate-like hybrid basis. But if we're really looking into project finance, taking this nascent industry on our shoulders, especially as development financial institutions, we really need to make sure that the fundamentals work from kind of a basic perspective. So here, in the case of many of the projects we've analyzed, things like cost of electricity, base load, and elements that give electrolyzers, as was discussed already, kind of stability and reliability are key because cost is really a true kind of fundamental issue around electricity and cost competitiveness. Because the demand on the other side really needs to make sense and compete, hopefully, on a like-to-like basis with other gray alternatives. If we are too far off on the cost side, we always run the risk of getting stuck with like high cost, as it happened years ago with renewable energy, for example. No, this is the trend of the industry. Somebody needs to support it, but we need to make sure that down the road, stranded asset risk is properly managed. And so from a demand perspective, we're really privileging projects that tackle local demand, as was addressed by Mr. Bakre on the Indian side, or regional demand, where, again, we saw so many projects having signed MOUs with, the Port of Rotterdam or the Port of, it's great. There was a lot of project development. Some of those will survive, some won't. But really, if we focus on what the industry needs is offtakes with solid long-term profiles, and that from a cost competitiveness, really make the projects be able to take off and just kind of be at the lower curve of the cost curve, basically. So just from a cost perspective, this needs to add up. Fundamentals, cost, then demand as well. Make sure that bankers and the debt, if we're financing this on a project finance basis, are actually made whole, and that commodity risk is minimized, and that there is price visibility in the long term, because what bankers need is certainty on cash flows, right? So that is another key element. And other costs on this end add up as well. Logistics, development costs, you name it, EPC, of course. So the overall equation needs to make sense in the end product, and that is tough. So to get there, we also, as a DFI, have partnered up with funds like the GCF. In the case of the Paraguay project, GCF came in with a big and relevant chunk of blended finance that is expected to support all of these fundamentals. Because either we get support from the governments or we get support on the blended finance side, but something has to push these projects in the very early stages of a nascent industry to get to cost competitiveness so that the industry can take off. So that's a key element that also as a DFI can also bring in. And the other big aspect that wraps everything up, of course, is the quality of the sponsors. No, many of these projects have excellent developers, but we also need, these are big projects, big endeavors. We're now talking in the hundreds of megawatts. We really need strong backs and financial backs from sponsors, from investors, to make sure that the money is there, but also that the execution and the expertise is there, so that in the end the debt and the equity can make sense. So this is kind of the overall view, many lessons learned, but really seeing the role of DFIs, as we did 10, 15 years ago with renewable energy, as really fundamental to launch this industry. It's nascent, and informing our decision-making with reports like the one launched by ESMAP in terms of electrolyzers, where there's really a lack of track record. So we are all kind of building the industry as we go, is really key, and we really appreciate the opportunity and the insights that the report also brings for this and other projects down the road. So thank you, Carolina and team.
Thank you very much, Naide. And you brought something that it is not per se the electrolyzer, but as Ivana and for example, Mr. Bakri mentioned, and also Mr. Naoki, we are seeing the projects that are advancing have regional or local demand, at least from developing countries, and that is also something very interesting to see and evaluate why this trend is moving forward. And another point that you made is the need of blended financing and how, for example, climate financing can help to bridge the gap of these projects. We know we are running behind with the program, and if that is okay, we can have one question from the chat. Several of them are related to intermittency and the selection of the technology. So, Dolph, if I can summarize 4 or 5 questions that were related on that, is like, how are you seeing the trend? Would then you prefer a PEM over an alkaline, or how can project developers deal with this, especially considering that we want to leverage the renewable energy in emerging markets and developing countries?
Yeah, so it's a very important topic, and it came up, I think, in all the interviews we had, and the answers we got were a little bit. It's one of the topics I hinted at, where we got different answers, the different ideas of how to deal with that. First of all, a number of the projects that we see go forward, I mean, Naiva mentioned the Atom project, for example, they rely on hydropower. So hydropower electrolyzer integration is easier because you don't have the same type of intermittency you have with solar and wind. The other projects that you see go forward, and we talked about NEOM, for example, they're in locations where you have very good wind that is complementary with solar. So again, that takes away some of the intermittency. And I hinted at that we see some projects coming up that in fact try to bank on very low cost solar, try to operate only with that. That is a new development, not yet proven, I would say, at a commercial scale, but you see that these projects are currently being developed. And there are various ways to deal with much higher levels of intermittency. So one is project developers are looking at how to combine alkaline electrolyzers that normally would require more stable electricity supply with PEM. So if you have PEM is better at dealing with that variability. I would say AEM technology it has similar characteristics as PEM, but it does not yet have the durability of the proven durability of the other technologies that's coming. You also see, as I mentioned, that projects are designed with much more battery capacity that is enabled by battery cost coming down. So that is a way also to deal with variability. So there are various strategies being explored and being deployed to enable that integration. Up there.
Thank you, Dolph. And considering this is a hybrid event, we open the floor for one question here from the audience. I believe there was one question over here. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Daniela. I'm a PhD candidate at Columbia doing a PhD in chemical engineering. And my research is on green hydrogen electrolysis, specifically looking at seawater electrolysis. So that's very nascent. But I'm really grateful for this being here and seeing that you guys have interviewed 50 people from the firms, because I think from an academic standpoint, that's something that we don't have information or leverage to. But my question is around when you did the interviews with these the developers specifically, and there's this manufacturing overcapacity you alluded to. Did they say anything about them utilizing their expertise in electrolyzer manufacturing in other verticals, maybe retrofitting the electrolyzers for maybe acid and base production, so that they can also still leverage the technical expertise that they have, but then selling it to different markets? Is that something that maybe came up?
I mean, of course, the focus of the discussion was on electrolyzers, not if they wanted to go out of electrolyzers into other business, right? But what you see is that the OEMs that are active, it's a quite mixed bag, right? There are some companies which have a broad technology base, and they added electrolyzers to their portfolio. There's a number of renewable power companies that also went into electrolyzers as they saw it as a downstream activity. And then you have a number of innovative players who think that they have a specific breakthrough technology and try to bring that into the market. So, of course, because we have such a difficult market now, you need to have deep pockets to survive in that market. And what you see happening now is also a lot of restructuring. So in recent months, a number of companies have gone bankrupt, and you see that the assets then have been bought by other companies with deeper pockets. So we'll see how that plays out in the coming months and years.
So with that, we can wrap up the session. I want to convey our sincere gratitude to our participants, Demetrios, Dolph, Naide, and Mr. Nauki that are here, but also for our participants connected online, Ivana, Mr. Bakre, and Frank Bolak. The report is available online. It is also the executive summary and key findings available in Spanish and French, and Arabic and Japanese are also coming online. And we hope that this report ignites more questions, more discussions, and serves the industry and the hydrogen economy to move forward, especially in developing countries. With that, thank you very much, and we can close the session.